Greetings and God bless. Welcome to another episode of Pastor Mike, Dynamic Voices for a Diverse Church, powered by The Witness, a Black Christian collective. I'm your host, Tyler Burns. You can follow me on Instagram at Burns Clan. Please follow at your own risk. And joining me, as always, is the founder of The Witness. He has an extensive bio. He is the man, the myth, the legend, the three-time, soon-to-be five-time best-selling author. He is Mr. Blue Check Verified himself. He is a Notre Dame alum. He is the Harvard University speaker. He is the top 5 cultural artifacts connoisseur. He is the amuse-bouche aficionado. He is JemarTisby.substack.com. Dr. Jemar Tisby, what's going on, bro?
That's good, man. That's good. Great introduction. And, you just kept it going and kept it going. Just like this episode, we had a first episode. Now we got to keep it going and keep it going.
For those of you who are not familiar, if you're new to this, not true to this, no worries. We got a primer for you. This is our cultural artifacts episode. If you missed part 1, got to go back and listen to part 1. But part 2, we are getting into our favorite things from the year. And you know our rule here. It can be anything. It can be a person, a thing, a church, an article, a book, a TV show, album. I typically tier more to the pop culture stuff, a historical event like Jemar would typically do. The only criteria for it is you have to have consumed it this year. It doesn't have to come out in 2024. Now, this is a rare year where I think pretty much all of mine come out in 2024 because 2024 was a whole decade in a year, man. Come on, like, you know what time it is. Wild. But this is cultural artifacts, and we had so much fun on part 1. Jemar, it's the best list Jemar has done. For me, I know he loves all the other things, but man, that made my heart warm, man. I'm telling you, Jemar pulled out some excellent selections. 10 out of 10, no notes. But now we're getting into part 2. So I'll run back my part 1 list, and then Jemar, you can run back yours. So I had the gospel album, You Belong by Jason Nelson, a live album. I had the Shabuzi album, Where I Am Is Where I'm Going. I had the comic book series, The Power Fantasy. I had the Netflix streaming show Supercell. And I had the book by David Peisner, Homie, Don't Play That, about the inception of In Living Color. And Jemar, you had?
I had Beyonce's album, Cowboy Carter. I had the Business Movers podcast. I had the Lioness TV series. I had Transformers 1, the movie. And I had the artist Blood Orange.
So go ahead, man. Get us started with part 2, man. Get us started with part 2,
okay.
Bro.
So in part 1, I framed it as Tyler is the pop culture aficionado. He is the tastemaker. He's going to put you on to stuff you never heard of, and it's going to blow your mind. I have a sense he's going to continue on that vein. I'm switching gears a bit here to what Tyler calls the roots, Jemar. So this is the socially conscious.
Ain't no wrong with that.
Historically informed politics, current events, Jemar. So I am going to get a little bit more into that with a dash of self-improvement wellness. And so these things are actually quite related in my mind, and to a greater and greater degree. How can we be peacemakers if we don't make peace within ourselves is the kind of vibe I'm on. Okay, entering especially this new regime. So this first one is on the self-improvement thing. You've heard me talk about it many times on the podcast and elsewhere, but it has not yet made a cultural artifacts list because I didn't start it until March of 2024. So this is Morning Pages by Julia Cameron. This is comes out of the work of the writer Julia Cameron. She wrote the book The Artist's Way. And as a companion to The Artist's Way, she has a journal called Morning Pages. The reason it's called Morning Pages is because you're supposed to write in the morning. What are you supposed to write? 3 pages of longhand stream of consciousness writing every single day for 3 months. 3 pages for 3 months by hand. This is not typing. So the first time I did it, like I said, it was in March. First 3 pages I did, my hand was cramping up after the first paragraph. I was like, how am I going to write 3 pages? And I was so guarded, even in myself, about journaling. The whole first entry was me expressing my fear that someone's going to find the journal. And then
Wow.
as I got into it, it was incredible how much we're afraid of our own feelings, how much we're afraid of admitting our own true thoughts. So the analogy I recently came across is because we're so afraid of confronting not only our emotions but our true desires. That's been the biggest transformation for me, is to admit what I really want. Admit what I really want, because we filter these things, we couch and condition these things, we reject these things out of hand. But when you get into your true self, oh man. So the biggest one of the analogies I came across is, a lot of times our emotions are like a flood, and we dam them up, and when they build up so much, that dam bursts and these emotions come flooding out. When a healthier way is that our emotions are like a waterfall, consistent flow, dropping into a calm lake. And when I first started journaling, it was like a dam broke, and all of this flood of not just emotions, but really kind of suppressed or repressed thoughts, and not all of them negative, dreams and
Mm-hmm.
visions of the future, right? Those came flooding out. Now, so that's, you're supposed to do this for 3 months, and the workbook is 90 different entries for that. At the end of before I even finished the first 3 months, I knew I was going to do it again. And then I did it again. And then I did it again. So now I'm on my fourth journal, on my way to a full year of journaling every single day. I have not missed a day. God willing, I will not miss a day. And now it's become more like that waterfall of, it's nothing, it's usually not stuff that's brand new. It's continuation of stuff. It's an evolution of stuff. And what it is so important that we have a constant mechanism to process our inner thoughts and desires, because we are just so not aware of how much we're keeping inside and not dealing with. And again, it's not all negative. Most of this is inspiring. And so much of what I've written down has come to pass. And so I commend to people morning pages. It is an extremely helpful exercise in returning to you. And the last thing I'll say about this is, what I'm discovering more and more is that the answers we seek are not out there in the world somewhere, they're in us. If we can pull away the layers, if we can pull away the trauma, if we can dig deeper, then we will find a return to ourselves, which is truly our authentic self, who God made us to be. And I think it's a returning to ourselves that we get answers about direction, about vocation, about relationships, about life path, about our feelings, that we would never discover reading a book, listening to a podcast, or even talking to a trusted friend or associate. So, morning pages, Julia Cameron, go out, do it. Don't think about it, just do it.
So I heard you talk about morning pages. The last time we had a retreat, I think, and you had mentioned it. So I was actually re-listening to an episode because one of, long story, but there was a person who listens to the episode and or listens to the podcast, and she actually helped us to navigate leadership stuff at the Witness. So she volunteered her time. She's actually super incredible leadership guru. So she volunteered her time to us, which was a tremendous gift. And she talked about a principle, and I incorporated that principle in my daily routine. And she said, "Oh, that was all." So I went back and listened to that episode. I was like, "Oh yeah, I did do that. You know, I do that now." And he talked about morning pages. So I, I listened to it earlier this week once I got back from my trip, and ordered the book. So
Oh,
ordered morning
nice.
pages, and it's in transit. So I couldn't wait. So I just started yesterday. So I
Oh my
started them.
gosh.
Yeah. So literally at the time of this recording, day two in my 3 pages.
Whoa.
So
That's
yeah.
It is literally
And I know
transformative.
I'm gonna put the
Yeah.
things in the journal and do all that. But yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
bro.
That's great. I'm
So shout
excited
out
to
to
hear
you,
what you
man.
come up with.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
I
awesome.
was very
What you got?
guarded. Like the first one was like I was
I
very guarded. I
know.
was like, I don't know if I want to talk about that here, and then I don't know if I want to talk about this here, and I don't know. Maybe I need to pray about this more, and
So many levels to this thing. Yes,
levels,
yes.
levels.
And
Yeah,
you confront yourself, in a good and healthy way, and you become more courageous when you do. So I am excited about this journey. I cannot wait to hear your feedback and reflections.
man. Thank you for leading the way on that, and encouraging us to have some self reflection. All right. So number six on my list, number one in part two, is going to be another Netflix show. It's a miniseries, and it is called Sprint. And so Sprint chronicles the World Athletics Track and Field Cycle Championships in season one or part one. And then in part two, it chronicles the Olympic Games. And so this is kind of my Paris entry. The Olympic Games were this year in Paris. Maybe, probably, the Olympics are always memorable. Whenever you get people who have been working that hard and that long for one specific goal, you find that you get memorable moments, iconic moments, no matter what. But I think for this year was perhaps the most memorable Olympics I've ever seen, for so
Mm,
many different reasons. I think it was, the nature of how things have been constructed. Also, the first Olympics since COVID, right? So it felt like the first real Olympics in maybe 8 years rather than, just the 3 or 4 years from the previous one. Obviously the Steph Curry and LeBron James mega show that was the USA basketball team, the memorable, iconic moments that Steph Curry gave us there. And I could have put that in there. There are other sports that were tremendous. Gymnastics was tremendous. Swimming was awesome. So many different sports that I could have put in there. But y'all know when it comes to the Olympics, y'all know when it comes to, what time it is.
the
Like
classic.
the main event is on the track.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
main event is the sprints, man. Come on. Now y'all know what time it is, right? And I started watching sprints earlier this year when it came out in anticipation for the Olympics. They dropped it around that time, which was really exciting. But then, watching the Olympics, then being able to see behind the scenes of everything that happened, perhaps the most exciting 100-meter final that Noah Lyles edged out, but I think it was 1/1000th of a second or something of that nature. Um, Maybe ever, maybe the most exciting 100-meter race ever, where he was last place for about 60 to 70 meters of the race and then ends up winning. I mean, it's just you can't even predict. Like, you can't
It was
script that better. I
wild.
mean, it's just
Yes.
ridiculous. And then him contracting COVID, finding out he had COVID, and then running in the 200 meters even with COVID. Um, just the drama and how serious people take it. You think about all of our major moments in life and how many of our major moments are wrapped up in minutes and seconds, but we spend hours and
Hmm.
days and months and years agonizing over them.
Mm.
Years just agonizing over them. And then in 9 seconds, you find out where you land. And there are some guys that land in last and other guys that win the gold. And it's striking, building up
Yeah.
the anticipation, the expectation, but also the ability to be present with the anticipation patient and expectation. That's one of the hardest things for me in track. When I ran track in high school, it was very difficult and hard for me to consider how would I hold the tension of the present moment and the future anticipation to work as hard as I could and to work as hard as I needed to prepare my body for the future without being so overwhelmed with the future to sabotage my present preparation. I mean, it's just that
Mm.
tension. It really shows strong in sprint. It is, I mean, perhaps the best thing I've seen put together in terms of sports, track and field, behind the scenes that I've ever seen. Tremendous, almost scary levels of access, scary levels of transparency and vulnerability. And it really helped me as a fan to see just how much it costs them to do what they do,
Mm.
and to see really truly the triumph of victory and the crushing agony of what it means to lose when you've worked so hard for something. So I love Sprint. I'm gonna keep going back to it and watching it. It has tremendous replay value as well. So I do want to
Mm.
acknowledge that. So yeah, Sprint would
I'm
be
glad
number
you
6 for me.
mentioned that. Yeah, it's on my list. It's on my to watch list. And I remember just watching the trailer and being like, yo, this is about to be incredible. So I am glad you reminded me of that. I will go back and definitely watch that. For my next one, I'm going to do one more, really two more sort of self-improvement, but this one is more like constant learning kind of a thing. And it's a little bit commercial. So in that sense, maybe a little bit unexpected and but commercial, but also a little bit niche as well. So this, I am going to say for my next cultural artifact is the masterclass videos.
Of course,
Masterclass
absolutely.
videos. So, I've seen all the commercials online and whatnot, and they look really cool. And like, yeah, I ain't about to pay no money for this. Finally, I did. And I can't remember what kind of pushed me over the edge. I think I must have seen some particular uh, class or lesson that I was really interested in enough to say, well, I'll pay for this. But once I got into that world, I'm like, whoa, there is a lot here. So what I love about it is the format. So the video format is top notch, high class, fine quality, very excellent production. It is visually, I wouldn't even just say appealing, but in some instances magnetic, right? You wouldn't think somebody, and usually it's just one
That's a good
expert,
word. Yeah.
is just talking and talking about what they do would be that interesting. But the way they do it is I just think Masterclass is a masterclass in modern day video editing in an educational format. It really, I think, is a pace setter in that sense. The app is what I use. So I do this during workouts and whatnot like that. And what I like about it, A, you can download the episodes. B, you can do it in video or you can do it in audio. So if I'm driving or something like I can still listen. Now it's not the same because they do use visuals, not just to break it up for interest, but actually as part of the teaching. Nevertheless, you can still get the gist of it. So I've recently listened to a couple ones. The Reframe Your Thinking class by Ava DuVernay was really interesting. She
The
focuses on
goat.
making,
The goat.
yeah, she focuses on the adaptation of the book Cast by Isabel Wilkerson and just the process of getting that made, but in describing that, the larger process of telling Black stories, Black women making it in the industry, how to craft a story, who do you need to bring in as far as a team and collaborators, all of that stuff. The one I listened to most recently, which caught me off guard with how interested I was in it, was called Achieve More with Gen AI. Achieve More with Gen AI. Now, this was a group of people, all artificial intelligence experts, unpacking what AI can do, where it's headed, what the dangers are, what the benefits are. And it's one of those things that I just hadn't tapped into yet. Like to me, it seems complicated and doesn't intersect with my daily world at all. It already is. It already is. AI is here. It's here to
Absolutely.
stay.
Yeah,
What
it
it
is.
becomes is yet to be determined, but it's really exciting. I mean, it can take mundane work, whether reading emails or doing research or whatever it is, and make it interesting. And then what this masterclass did was just show how a regular, ordinary, everyday person could use it in their lives. So it kind of made me excited to think about and try out different things like that. But the app itself is just really convenient. It's a breadth of topics, everything from philosophy to investing to, making movies. There's one, I believe it was Issa Rae did. That was really funny and fun and creative and all of that stuff. So yeah, more of the self-improvement. You want to learn in a way that is entertaining and engaging. Check it out. I don't have a I don't have an affiliate link to give you, but that's what
Yeah, I was about to
that's what
say.
I
I
was
was like,
using.
hey man, you got a link, you got that J Tisby for 30% off or something like that.
Let
Nah,
me
bro.
contact
I
them.
haven't actually, I don't think I've ever subscribed to it, but I did like a trial or something of that nature. And the part that I saw, or maybe I was listening to them, you can watch them sometimes on like flights. So sometimes the flights will have little
Yeah, yeah.
ones for you to watch. I think I watched it there. Incredible, just super helpful. Like, so anything that I've watched has been really helpful. So I can see how that would be something that would accelerate your productivity, but also accelerate your learning as well. Yeah, there's no AI on my list, but it probably should have been because Gen AI, man, I'm telling you, y'all get hip to it. Don't run from it, run towards it as best as you possibly can,
Yes.
because it's very, very important for the future and the present as well. This happens every year, Jamar. Number 7 for me is the week of. I end up watching something, seeing something, coming across something, and it completely changes my list.
That
And
recency bias. Okay. It's
yeah,
it's not so all
it's
right.
definitely it's definitely recency bias for me. Was not expecting this to crack it in my top 10 list. It 100% did. I watched it. I've been thinking about it ever since, and probably going to watch it again soon. But it is the movie Conclave. Conclave.
Oh, I've seen previews for that.
Yeah. So the synopsis of it is Cardinal Lawrence is tasked with one of the world's most secretive and ancient events, which is participating, or I should say, what it should have said is facilitating, leading the selection of a new pope. And the pope passes away. And so he now is in charge of the conclave to elect the new pope. And so, surrounded by powerful religious leaders in the halls of the Vatican, he soon uncovers a trail of deep secrets that could shake the very foundation of the Roman Catholic Church. How would I describe conclave? I would describe conclave as high speed chess.
Ooh,
High speed chess with special effects, like sound effects. Just amazing.
interesting.
I mean, it's one reviewer described it as not just visually satisfying or something like that. It's not just entertaining, satisfying in terms of entertaining, but also it's philosophically satisfying. And it 100% is. The actors, led by, I believe it's Ralph Fiennes, who does Cardinal Lawrence.
Rafe.
The
Yeah.
act, what is it? Was it Ray Fiennes or was it Ralph or Ray?
I
Now you're
think I
gonna give
think
me
that yeah, I think it's spelled Ralph, but I think it's pronounced Rafe.
really. You say Rafe, bro?
I think so.
You just put me on. Hold on. Rafe Fiennes. That's what. Oh, wow. Okay. See, you put me on. Hey, you Ralph to me. Hey, hey. What Kanye say? It ain't Ralph though. It ain't Ralph though. Nah, man. But Ray Fiennes, he killed it, man. He was tremendous. It was. I was not expecting to be that entertained. This is how I know it's a good movie. I was streaming the film because it's out on streaming, and I tap the screen or scroll the screen, and you see how much time is left. And I had this like, oh no, it's only 25 minutes left. I had this like, oh no, like I was like, oh
Time
dang, it's almost
flying.
over.
Like I don't want it to end.
The power of an excellent edited work. It's edited so well. The storyline is riveting when it seems like it wouldn't be. The internal politics, the church implications, spiritual implications. Um, there are a couple of major twists that kind of I didn't see coming. I couldn't have you. I mean, you could have put it. And maybe somebody was, maybe other people were paying attention, but you could have put it and get 20 guesses. And it wasn't until one particular twist happened, which I won't tell you when or where, but wasn't until that where it got close. I was like, oh, now I know they not. Oh, wow. It was surprising, and I love movies and shows that surprise me, but that push me to the boundaries of what do you do when you uncover a secret. What do you do when you uncover something that really could undermine the foundations of what you've given your life to. And in a
Wow.
world of clergy abuse and
Yeah.
spiritual abuse and trauma, it asks hard questions that the Catholic Church has had to wrestle with for a long time. Please understand. But it asks hard questions of all of us who are committed to religious institutions. When we find something that could be damaging, embarrassing, but also could be frightening for people to consider, what do you do? And Conclave wrestles with that question and comes up with a few options that would
Okay.
leave you sitting back and saying, I don't know if the right choices were made in all of the situations. So it leaves you
Hmm.
with something to wrestle with. It's clear the movie has a lean, but then there's another level of interesting. So
That's so good.
Conclave,
And
man, it's a
it is a
banger.
rare movie that catches you off guard in terms of plot. Because you're usually one of the type is like, I know where this is going. I know where this is
Nah,
going.
I
So
mean,
that's a
sometimes, like most of the time, I thought I knew where this one was going. And then I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's where I expected it to go. Especially once you watch it, we'll laugh about, tell me when you watch it, because we'll laugh about one scene, one situation where I was like, oh, yeah, I knew there was not going to let that happen. But then, so I was like, oh, okay, I know where that's going. I don't know, that's not going to happen. But as time elapsed, I was like, I was not seeing that coming at all. That's different.
that's
So I
good
was pleasantly
storytelling.
surprised and great storytelling. And yeah, Conclave is one of them ones for sure.
All right, here's what the internet says about the actor's name.
Rafe Fiennes.
Rafe, hey,
There it is. Hey, we don't make the rules. Listen.
hey, I told y'all, you know what Kanye said on Sway? It ain't Ralph though. It ain't Ralph.
The name that shall not be spoken. Um, Okay, so this is my favorite one, and it's so predictable. And I'm half cheating here because I'm lumping a few things together into a category. And so I'll unpack the category. Now, I told you at the top of the show I was going to go all roots. Well, here it is. I want to throw it in the middle before I lose you, because I've got some fire quotes. This category and my next cultural artifact is history books. Now, let me
Okay,
tell you
let's
why.
cook. Let's
You're
cook.
like, oh, he's a historian. He reads history all the time. Actually, no, I don't. I was struggling, y'all. I was struggling coming up with what I felt like was original content, new ideas, fresh thoughts. Why? Because my well was empty. We were in a season in 2024 where it was just go, 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 go. I mean, I was speaking all the time. I even did some more preaching this year. I was writing a bunch, and I did not have time to really fill the tank specifically with historical writing, nonfiction, history, nonfiction writing. So, what I did, and this has now become part of my daily routine. First thing when I wake up, before I get out of bed, I pick up my Kindle Paperwhite, and I like that because I can hold it with one hand. And I read nonfiction. The nonfiction I read is history. And so I got through some amazing books this year, just reading 10, 15, 20 minutes a day. So I'm going to give you three of the books that I got through, and I'm going to give you a couple of quotes from each. So hang on a minute, but I guarantee you will love these quotes and you will love these books. So
All
the
right, let me
first
write this
book,
down. Hold on, let me write this
yes,
down.
yes,
Let me get it
yes.
together. Hold on.
The first book is called The Gospel of J. Edgar Hoover: How the FBI Aided and Abetted the Rise of White
I've
Christian
heard a
Nationalism.
lot about that one. Heard a lot
Oh,
about that.
so this book is a quintessential red meat for historians. The author is Lerone A. Martin, black guy, brilliant guy. He discovered, well, the FBI files of J. Edgar Hoover were released to the public, open to the public, more recently, right? And he discovered a vein within these files of J. Edgar Hoover's religiosity. Y'all, he was a right wing Christian. And he made and remade the FBI to support that over the course of his, what, 50 years in office? So here's a quote from the book. Hoover's FBI joined forces with the founding architects of white evangelicalism to aid and abet the rise of white Christian nationalism as a legitimate force in American politics. The FBI.
Wow. Wow.
So Hoover partnered with uh, uh, a Catholic priest for a retreat, a spiritual Christian retreat that his agents went to every year. He was writing for Christianity Today, and those articles all
Mm.
basically went, the mid 20th century version of viral. CT kept contacting him. Hey, would you write us another article? Would you write this? And then he got in exchange essentially syndication rights that he could reproduce those articles anywhere he wanted and send them to people. They were studied in churches and Sunday schools. Christians, white Christians, white evangelicals were writing J. Edgar Hoover letters asking for not only spiritual advice, but hey, is this piece of like Christian literature communist? Even a particular Bible translation, because of who it came from, they're like, is this communist infused kind of a thing? So what Martin is showing, Dr. Martin is showing in this book, is the integral marriage of the most powerful law enforcement agency in the country and its leader, J. Edgar Hoover, with the rise of white Christian nationalism as a political and cultural force. It is chilling. And he goes into so much irrefutable, first time revealed detail. It is a must read. Just so interesting and unique.
You know, what's so interesting before you get into the other books is that CT would have him write, especially in the context of, I don't know if it goes into this detail, but the kind of open secret about his sexuality and things like that, and like his, you know, affairs or relationships with men, all these very interesting. It's just very interesting, kind of that subtext and that, So watching J. Edgar, remember watching the movie J. Edgar, I think it was with DiCaprio, and some others, like just watching kind of that play out and how it assumes it as fact and just assumes it as like it was an open secret, and kind of hearing that Christian nationalists and all those questions about repression and all kinds of, just all these questions about like overcompensation and, all these types of things. Yeah, I have to read that. That's going to be really,
100%.
really interesting.
Yeah. And that particular point you raise about Hoover's sexuality, and yes, it was an open secret. He had this right-hand man in the FBI who was there for decades as well. They had this standing private appointment like every week or month or something like that, all of this stuff. But it was power. White evangelicals compromised so much just to have access to that kind of power and the kind of legitimacy that comes from the FBI director saying thumbs up to your Christian organization or congregation or initiative or whatever. And it unveils, I mean, what the book is really doing is unveiling, honestly, 20th century and into the 21st century, white evangelicalism as so much less about religion and so much more about power. Now, I'm going to refute that in a second, but not refute it, but I'm going to talk about another book that has sort of a different take on that. Here's another book. This one is a super good read by a historian. So it is very popular level accessible, and it's been made much of already. The book is called, I just want to get the subtitle here. The book is called Half American, The Epic Story of African Americans during World War II, at home and abroad. So have you heard of this book, Tyler? Half American.
I have not heard of this book yet.
Ooh, brother, it's so good. It's so good. So there, the title comes from an opinion article written in, I believe it was The Crisis, the NAACP publication. And this is written during World War II by a black guy writing in. And he says, should I sacrifice my life to live half American? Would it be demanding too much to demand full citizenship rights in exchange for sacrificing my life? Is the kind of America I know worth defending. Is the kind of America I know worth defending. So it is getting at this tension of all hands on deck. We need all patriotic Americans to enlist in the effort in World War II for the United States, while Black people are living half American, not full citizens. And then another quote from the book that just sort of encapsulates the thesis. Although the Nazis were conquered on the battlefield, the racial ideas of white supremacy continued to flourish in America. Half American aims to tell the definitive history of Black Americans in World War II. The reason why this book makes my cultural artifacts list and history books list is because it is so emotionally demanding. When you read about Black soldiers who go to camps, training camps in the South, being not only forced to go into segregated facilities. What a waste, y'all. This is essentially what Plessy v. Ferguson, separate but equal, did. Yeah. It said, okay, we have one United States military, but because of segregation, we are going to build two identical barracks, one for Black and one for white, when really we could just build one and everybody would be cool. We're going to build two separate bathrooms. We're going to build two separate camps almost. And there's this one particular episode in the South, I think maybe Alabama or Louisiana, I don't know. Black soldiers were first of all, they were trying to go into town for like a free night on the town. They had the time. Most of the businesses wouldn't let them in. The one that did, was like several miles walking away from the camp. And then there was another on the way back. There was another troop of white soldiers, and they could not share the road. And it's pouring rain. And the leaders of these companies forced the Black soldiers to walk in the ditch in the mud and not share the road. And these are soldiers training to go off to war. And then, of course,
my goodness,
passed over for all kinds of promotions, relegated to important but support roles, not front lines. The hell that the Red Tails, the Harlem troop of fighters, airline pilots had all of the stuff they go. So it's infuriating. It's emotionally demanding. And it is, we look at the military today as like this, a spot of true meritocracy where it doesn't matter color of your skin, where you come from, whatever. It's do you get the job done? It's about execution. It's about merit. And really, the history and now the present. Here's one of the other things. It is pressing right now. It is very pressing right now because Pete Hegseth, who is up for Secretary of Defense and would be in charge of all the military, he says the military has gone woke. They want to basically hold tribunals for generals who they think are too woke. There was a Supreme Court case, which thankfully the saner voices won, where it said race could be used as a consideration in the military because in the ruling, the justice said a diverse military is essential to national security. So we're still fighting these battles, is what I'm trying to say. Last one. And this one is often left field because I almost wrote a dissertation in the field of urban history. And it's a history of places, not just as places, but as sites of action, as theaters of history making. And so it centers place in the storytelling, and it's not just a backdrop or a setting of what humans are doing. So this book is called The New Suburbia: How Diversity Remade Suburban Life in Los Angeles After 1945. It's by Becky Nicolaides. And she says, the new suburbia refers to America's suburbs since the 1970s, which diversified at an accelerated pace. It's the second generation of suburbs after 1945, which transformed from starkly segregated whiteness into a more varied, uneven social landscape. Diversity in the new suburbia refers not just to race, but also to class, household composition, and the built landscape itself. Let me give you two more quick quotes. From 1970 to 2020, non-whites living in America's suburbs rose from just under 10% to 45% of all
Wow.
suburbanites.
Woo.
From 10% to 45% as of 2020. And then she says, in the new suburbia, white advantage persisted, but it existed alongside rising inequality, ethnic and racial diversity, and new family configurations. What's so important about this book is it is no longer accurate to conceptualize the suburbs as white, mainly or exclusively white.
Hmm.
In many urban areas, if not most, the suburbs have diversified to an astounding degree, racially and ethnically. But that is not to say they've become sites of racial egalitarianism. As she said, white advantage persisted. So what that meant was either white flight, white people moving out of these areas as black and brown folks came in, and also Asian Americans, especially because she focuses on Los Angeles as a case study. So they either physically moved out or they stayed put, but effectively withdrew from any spaces that had other races and ethnicities involved. So like public schools. So they went and formed private schools, civic groups. They have these country clubs, which somehow, some way continue to remain predominantly white, or they take over, which is what's happening now at the school board level and taking, quote unquote, taking back the schools for a particular kind of conception of education in suburbia. But it's defined by home owning, tax paying, send our kids to school. And what's also interesting is when black and brown and Asian folks make it to suburbia, depending on the particular ways that happens, they can adopt those same mindsets too. So you have people of color working
Wow.
at cross purposes against the poor or other members of their own racial and ethnic group because they don't represent the kind of suburbia that they were essentially trying to escape to or rise to. So those three books, The Gospel of J. Edgar Hoover, Half American, and The New Suburbia, form my one slash category of
Now
cultural
that's cheating,
artifact.
brother. I ain't gonna hold you. That's cheating.
I told you. I told
Now
you.
that's a little. You got me thinking. I was looking down trying to rejigger my list. Is there a little way I could, is there a way I could make it get some others
That's
in
the only
here?
time I do that.
That's that. No, the great titles. Excellent books that I put on my list immediately. That I wrote down to put on my list. I think those are amazing. Definitely the first two. I would definitely read those for sure. So shout out to you for bringing that education. And also, I think this is important because the how do I say this? One of the things that people used to say to me, one of the things people used to say is, "Man, I got friends and family in the FBI. That's why I don't like. That's why I don't like. That's why I don't like the Clintons. That's why I don't like the."
Huh? Come again?
I'll leave it alone.
Wow.
I heard that from no lie, 5 different people.
Wow.
And I'm like,
Not
oh,
fair.
so now I get the agenda here. Especially if you go
Not.
back to if you go back a few decades, I'll get the agenda
Oh
here.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, let me yeah, so I'll do this one here. I'm trying to figure out my list because I've got 10 things that could be in the last three. So I'm trying to figure it out. Okay, so I'll do one that's pretty clear that we've talked about a little bit before, but I think is just too good not to mention, and that is X-Men 97. The
Yes.
animated Disney Plus show, and it's a spinoff. It continues the story of X-Men, the animated series, which ended in 97. So kind of takes that X-Men 97 concept and idea, and it follows this team of the X-Men, team of X-Men who are trying to navigate life apart from Professor Charles Xavier, so Professor X. So they're trying to live their lives now under the direction of Cyclops or Scott Summers. So they're trying to live their life under his direction, but then they're also having to contend with the fact that Magneto is also vying for control. He's also vying for control in this mutant utopia called Krakoa, right? So he's like trying to get them to recognize their own power. There are a few episodes in this season of X-Men 97, because this is season 1, that are some of the best television I've ever seen. Like without any doubt, like just some of the best television. Obviously we've talked about or Bo and I talked about in certain spaces in separate places, the story of the show, Remember It, the episode Remember It on X-Men 97, which was absolutely heart-wrenching, heartbreaking. There's a scene as well in the show, which I won't get into too much detail because it may be a spoiler for some people, but there's a scene where people say, Magneto was right. Very much so giving you the Malcolm was right kind of vibes.
Right. Exactly. Folks sleep on that. Tell just a little snippet about Professor X Magneto and how that was in the context of civil rights.
The rumor and kind of the folktale is that they were created with the idea that the archetypes of Dr. King being Professor X and Malcolm X being Magneto. Some people have said that's overblown. Some people said that's not true. Some people say, whatever it is, it fits. It fits. So if we did it later, we did it. Okay, then that's us. We us. Okay, I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
But whatever it is, it fits in terms of the difference in philosophy and how pretty quickly you can see the value and the benefit and the argument for both perspectives. But also you can see that both perspectives would be lacking in some way, shape, or form. That's throughout all of X-Men lore, that they almost need each other as balance. They need each other as some sort of collaborative reality. But I mean, the show doesn't even really get it. The exploration of the characters, the depth, the subversion of characters and plots and twists, and people aren't who you think they are and couldn't be who you imagined. Every time I think back, that's kind of a key thing for me with the cultural artifacts, is when I think back on something, did it really like make me think or make me process what's happened before, and almost longingly be like, man, I need to go back and revisit that. And every time I think about X-Men 97, that's how I feel. And, Gambit has always been my favorite superhero outside of like a Black Panther or what have you. So Gambit's always been my favorite superhero. So this show does Gambit properly. That's what I say. This show does Gambit, which is tough properly, to do. For sure.
Very good.
Oh, it's the best, the peak Gambit. So yeah, definitely X-Men 97.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was definitely a remarkable feat of writing and animation, and nostalgia in a good way. So my next one is interesting because now we're getting into sort of events. But this one's not one event that happened on a particular day and time. It's more of an ongoing thing. And I think what's significant about it is why it's happening, but also what may happen next, which is pretty unpredictable. So my next cultural artifact is the exodus from X, formerly known as Twitter.
Very good.
The exodus from X, formerly known as Twitter. Now, for anybody who listens to this show, you're probably on social media. You probably are or increasingly were on Twitter, now known as X, because the exodus began when Elon Musk bought Twitter, which, can we just like pause on that for a second? A singular human being bought a multiple billion-dollar company, just bought it. I think it was 44 billion or something like that. Just bought it. And it's not just some company like making speakers. This is a loudspeaker, a megaphone of culture and politics and news.
Yeah. An information megaphone.
An information megaphone, and a billionaire who does not have the best interests or the common good of the American people, of the U.S., of the world at heart. He positioned himself as a free speech absolutist. which for Elon Musk meant racists and white supremacists could pop off at the mouth. Conspiracy theorists could pop off at the mouth without filters. So that the exodus began then. It accelerated again in 2024 when he aligned himself with Trump outright and supported him and now is a shadow president who's in the spotlight, which may be our only saving grace. One person said is you pit two narcissists against each other by saying the other one is getting more attention. So maybe that's it. I don't know. But anyway, there was this avalanche now, this trickle, and now this avalanche of people leaving X. And the reason why I think that's significant is, one, what I just mentioned, that this is an information megaphone, that this is not some tangential business to American culture and politics. Worldwide, globally, it has an influence, culture and politics. But another reason is because what are people going to? A lot of people have gone to Threads. Some people have gone to Blue Sky. A lot of people are rebelling against the meta universe of Instagram and Facebook. Even I think it's Goodreads is part of that universe.
Yeah.
So that's what's interesting to me is what comes next, because there's not going to be another replica of Twitter, because that was, I think, contextual in a time and space that made it what it is. That's not happening again. Other stuff will happen, but the same thing's not going to happen again. And so, is it going to be more fractured now? Which is, I think, in part what has to do with the election and the election results is a fractured ecosystem of information.
Absolutely.
Is there going to be any coalescing of it? What are people who listen to podcasts like Pass the Mic? What are we going to gravitate towards? Because it's going to be like certain subgroups and demographics that go to different places. And now we're facing, as we record this, TikTok might be banned,
almost certainly
US.
will be reduced or weakened in some way, shape, or form, if not banned completely.
So this complete decentralization of information gathering and sharing has left us with an unshared reality, a fractured reality, where it's even hard to converse with our neighbors because we may live in different informational ecosystems where the facts that we accept aren't even the same. And Elon Musk buying Twitter has only accelerated that process and made it more urgent, because it's not just about what events do you hear about or what you think about them. Now it's about how do you vote? What do you believe about your neighbor and how do you treat them?
That's so good. Yeah. And I haven't fully left X, but considering where I would go for information. I mean, primarily I've used X in recent years as just a in current events reaction space, like so a sports reaction space or what have you. It's just kind of become that because of what it's devolved into. Can't scroll through a comment section without seeing some sort of, porn or I mean, it's just nonsense. Like you see just
garbage.
Random stuff, or you see like just outright like ads for Donald Trump. Like
so
you just
many
see like
ads.
I can't tell you how many times over the past like week or so I've seen Paula White just randomly pop up talking about how tenacious Donald Trump is and all this. I'm just like, wow, how do we get like what are we
in the blue
doing
check?
Here? Like,
remember,
the blue
that
check
was part
is
of my
nonsense.
intro.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's garbage. It just means you paid
Yeah.
for the subscription and your posts get boosted. And who's going to pay for that subscription? The usual rogues gallery of right wingers who want to spread that propaganda. So there are many reasons people. I've not deleted my account, but I'm not posting on there. I might scroll through occasionally and like some things, or maybe retweet, but hardly ever even that. I'm more on Threads now. Instagram, IG stories. They want me to go over to Blue Sky. I'm just like, okay, I guess eventually it'll happen.
Blue Sky is cool. It's the curve of learning something new and getting comfortable with it.
Exactly.
And then also like there's a level of,
out.
I want to make sure I'm getting the people who I would follow on X are putting forth content to the same level of intensity.
Right.
as they are on X, as they were on X on Blue Sky. So I don't want to like feel like I lost, like losing the platform is one thing, but then losing like the access to content and information and
And the
news, which is
voices.
the
Yes,
benefit, and the
exactly.
voices. So
Yes.
that's been tough. But yeah, I think that's brilliant. I think that 100% deserves it. Um, all right, so we got two more. Well, you've got one more. I've got I'm just gonna put this charger in because we're going long. All right, so you've got one more. I've got two more. I made an adjustment on the fly. There's one big thing that I'll save it for the honorable mentions. I'll save it for the honorable mentions. I'm talking about this is my list. It's my list, my edge, my edge. Um, I'm gonna go another book, man. I have to include The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates. I have to.
Wow.
I
Wow.
have to. Have to. And it's kind of hard sometimes to process and think through, what's pop, what's too pop, what's too, like one that's very obvious. I'm not gonna put in there, but it's not because I didn't think it was worthy. It was on my list. I never thought I would take it out. But the more I'm thinking and hearing, I'm like, you know what? Like I feel like The Message has affected me more than this other thing or this person. The Message is Ta-Nehisi Coates writing um, reflections, three big reflections on three different places. So Dakar, Senegal, where he tracks going back to some roots and also doing exploration of the African diaspora. Um, Columbia, South Carolina, where he talks about book banning and specifically the banning of his own books and a reflection of that. And then the lion's share, the large portion of the book, is dedicated to Ta-Nehisi Coates' reflections on Gaza and the Palestinian genocide that is happening currently, and that is what it is. It is a genocide, and beyond just the writing excellence, right? The writing excellence. Ta-Nehisi Coates has mastered the ability to say hard things and maintain his soul.
Hmm.
And I don't know if he's definitely not a believer. I'm not talking about soul in that context, but to maintain who he is and stay true to who he is and say hard things at the same time, that is a constant wrestle, a painful art, a confusing discipline. In many ways, I don't think people understand, and I've said this before in many different contexts, but people do not understand how vulnerable, exposing it is to remain true to yourself when you have to say hard things to people who do not want to hear them. And the amount of soul exposure that happens. It's not just an exposure physically, it's not just an exposure emotionally and mentally. There's a soul exposure that happens when you have to say hard things, when you constantly have to justify um, your opinion, your argument, and not in the context of good faith, but in the context of racist dismissal, when you have to constantly bolster yourself and you wrestle with the reality of, did I say something, did I miss something, did I not say something well, did I, and seeing kind of the reaction to him, particularly in regards of course to Palestine, and some of the antagonistic journalistic interviews that he's had to navigate on public platforms, to
It
where
was
people
brutal.
are,
One of those went viral
yeah,
when
where
when
where
when the journalist said, if I was reading this and I didn't know who wrote it, I would think, a Hamas operative with a backpack full of explosives might say the same things, basically
and it
accusing
just
him of
jumped
anti-Semitism,
out the interview. First question that he asked is that, it's like, really? His
which was an
response to that
accusation.
also,
Yeah.
absolutely, couched in, damning language, damning with faint praise. Um, then his interview with Ezra Klein, which I thought was not as vitriolic, but I also thought was curious. And not to say that Ezra Klein does not push people in the same way, other ideologies in the same, but I didn't see, I don't know if I've ever seen him push them like that. There was a level of like, really, you know, and again, maybe he does, on a regular basis. I can't recall that level of intensity. Um, and even though I thought some of his questions were fair, I thought a lot of his questions were fair. But the ability of Coates to remain integrated, to not disintegrate in those moments, but also to say, I have thought myself clear on this. And I've thought myself clear to the point of not just intellectual clarity, but key moral clarity.
Wow.
I have
That
moral
part.
clarity on this. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a challenge for me, knowing that Coates is not a believer, to say it should be convicting for me to see such moral clarity and to know that there are areas, issues, places in my life where I don't have the same level of conviction. Not because I don't know, but because I'm not willing to say. And I think those are that's the message has pushed me in that regard. Even to the place of saying, I don't, maybe it's too much. Maybe pushing too far, maybe going too hard. And then when
Mm.
you read someone who's literally, putting their career, professional life on the line, even while being, you could after Between the World and Me, you could skate. I mean,
Didn't have
white
to write
people,
another thing. Yeah.
white liberals are still talking about Between the World. You could just skate free. You didn't have to do We Were 8 Years in Power. You didn't have to do the Moynihan Report. You didn't have to do that stuff. You don't have to do any of that. You have to do the message. You don't have to talk about Palestine. You can just skate on that money for the rest of your life. But he says there's more I want to say. And for that, I honor that level of courage, that level of moral clarity pushes me and inspires me. And sad to say, there are many times where we have the moral bluster in equal amounts in the church. We have the volume,
Mm.
but not the depth of moral clarity.
I don't say this lightly, but he is to me the closest analogy we have to James Baldwin today.
Without
Uh,
a doubt.
Many others have said this, but this is why. Everything that you're articulating is why. So James Baldwin grew up in the church, knows the church, could kind of take the church or leave it, but understood it and was able to speak in that vernacular and in a way, particularly around morality, that has resonance with religious people, spiritual people, people of faith. And he's also an author and artist who was so compellingly, eloquently honest that you couldn't look away. You couldn't ignore. And that's what Coates is. Some people are really honest,
Yeah.
but it's kind of a screeching loud. Could you turn down the volume? Because everything you're saying is on 10. And it's not even that I don't want to listen. It's just my ears can't take it. But
Yeah.
he's able to have nuance and modulation and not at all soft selling it. As a matter of fact, like you said, having a courage that it actually shames a lot of the rest of us for not being as
Yes.
bold. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So
Yes. He's
I haven't read it
a
yet
master of voice.
because I know it's heavy. I know it's thought provoking and all of that stuff, but I need to read it. I want to read it.
It's a
That's
quick
good.
read too. It's not a long read. It's a quick read
Another
too.
brilliant move of a great author. You don't have to write 700 pages. That's good, man. That's good. Okay, so I'm going to keep on this sort of religious tip, but I'm going to add a splash of politics to it. And I don't quite know. Well, I have two names for this next cultural artifact. This is my last one. I think it's my last one. Um,
Yep.
it is thin versus thick political theology, or politics in black and white Christian edition.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we have not yet mentioned the 2024 presidential race and election. Now, if that ain't a cultural artifact, I don't know what is. But I don't want to mention the race in aggregate or in general. I want to mention the presidential election in terms of a black Christian political theology and a white Christian political theology. So let me just share this data with you real quick. This is from the Public Religion Research Institute, PRRI, and they did about a about a month after the election, they released these post-election results, so which fine-tunes and is a bit more accurate than the initial exit polls. I just want to focus on these religious groups, white evangelical Protestants and black Protestants, how they voted. 85% of white evangelical Protestants who voted for Donald Trump with strong support across church attendance levels. 86% of black Christians supported Kamala Harris, showing overwhelming alignment with democratic values and candidates. So let's think about that one data point. 85% of white evangelicals voted for Donald Trump. 86% of black Christians supported Kamala Harris. They are the mirror image of one another in the opposite directions. Now, Robert Jones, the founder of PRRI, brought this up. And he, born and raised in Mississippi, he was Southern Baptist for much of his life. And he's like, the white evangelicals have been on the wrong side of slavery, on segregation, on issues of public justice for centuries, and politics for centuries. Might it be time to pause and learn from our black brothers and sisters who are, if you put them on two poles on a spectrum, white evangelicals, really white Christians in many ways, but in particular, white evangelical Protestants and black Christians would be on the polar opposites of that spectrum. That ought to tell you something. That ought to tell you that we are interpreting the Bible, the faith, and politics in almost completely diametrically opposed ways. Absolutely. And there are no other religious demographic groups that are that far apart. And what's so interesting is, on paper, we would probably share a lot of the same beliefs. That's where this tension for me comes in with the term evangelical. Are you a black evangelical, Jemar? Well, no, I don't use that term. But on paper, we're not that far apart on the basics of the faith. But it's the application of the faith, or I would say theologically, it's political theology that we are so very, very, very far apart from. Yes. And then the last point I'll make on this is higher church attendance is correlated with more support for white Christian nationalism, the Republican Party, and Donald Trump for white Christians. Which, here's the implication. Churches are vectors of white Christian nationalism. You don't like that language? Churches are super spreaders of white Christian nationalism.
Yeah, super spreaders.
For white Christians. So it's not that they're getting all this white Christian nationalism stuff from the culture, from news, from the political landscape. They're getting it from their churches. Yes, the pulpit, but also Sunday school materials, conferences, retreats, the entire constellation of what Christian churches and parachurches do, in many instances, is reinforcing white Christian nationalism among white Christians. And essentially, the opposite is true for black Christians. Churches are reinforcing ideas of an inclusive, participatory democracy. And until white Christian America sits up, really sits down, and takes a seat.
Come on, bro.
Listening to the black Christian tradition, our politics will always reflect a fractured, not only political reality, but ecclesiastical reality as well. So that is my last cultural artifact, thick versus thin political theology, which I talk about and write about on my Substack, or politics in black and white Christian edition.
Bro, we've been saying the same thing for about 13 years. It is wild. And so much of it is the consistent commitment to say what everyone already knows but refuses to do. And so, amen. Amen to it all. Amen. Man. All right, I got one more.
Yeah.
This one's not
We
gonna
ready.
surprise anybody. Shouldn't surprise anybody if you follow me. Um, Doom Part Two.
Thank you.
Doom Part Two.
Thank you. Talk about it.
Um, there are a lot of things on this list that are missing. Again, I got a list of about 15 different things. A lot of things on this list that are missing. I won't even get to all of them in my honorable mentions, honestly. Um, but there's one thing that from the time I saw it, I said, "Oh no, 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 no! This is going to be on the list."
Nice.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happens. Doesn't matter what comes. Doesn't matter if anything, whatever takes place. This one's going to be on the list. And Doom Part Two, it is the sequel to Doom Part One, or Dune, by Denis Villeneuve. Um, and it follows Paul Atreides as he tries to unite the Fremen people to wage war against House Harkonnen in the Dune universe. So Timothy Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Josh Brolin, Austin Butler, Florence Pugh, Christopher Walken. I mean, Dave Bautista, Javier Bardem, a who's who of cast. Let me tell you something, man. I'm not gonna go best. This is as good as a sequel can be.
Mm.
It's as good. It's a perfect sequel. It's a perfect sequel. It's in the league with. I'm not saying it's better than or that, but whatever. It's in the league with Empire Strikes Back. It's in the league with Lord of the Rings: Two Towers.
Mm.
It's in the league with, you know, Captain America: Winter Soldier. It's in the league with these types of films.
Yeah.
And Godfather Part Two. Let's keep it a beam, man. Godfather Part Two. And what I enjoyed about Dune 2 is it is a movie that starts off very strong with not a lot of guesswork that has to be done from part one to part two. No fill in, picks up right where part one left off. And then in 2/3 of the way into the film, it enters a different stratosphere. Where the first half of the film, to 2/3 of the film was excellent. And then that last third, it goes into a place that makes me so, whoa.
It's like, oh, we got another gear.
It's a totally different gear. Where Timothy Chalamet enters a space I was not prepared for him to enter. As an actor, as a presence, with a thin, frail frame, typically seen by many people, he fills the screen. Um, Cinematography, production, sound design. The sound design was absolutely ridiculous. I was in a theater and there was a scene in that last third. It was, you know, I'm not gonna tell you what happened, but there's a scene involving the worms in the Dune universe on Arrakis, and seats were shaking. Seats in the theater shaking. I felt in my
Mm-hmm.
chest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, it doesn't get any better than this, bro. Like, I mean, let's be honest. Like, from a writing perspective, from a ultimate kind of the denouement perspective, the climax when things twist and turn. But what I appreciate about Dune 2 is it made me take a at hard look at who I consider to be my heroes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there's a thin line between heroism and idolatry.
Mm.
There's a thin line between heroism and tyranny. And it made me ask a lot of questions about how we anoint messiahs. And then once we anoint messiahs based upon the mythology that we desperately desire them to fit into, they end up taking us to a place that will ultimately destroy us. And we willingly, gleefully follow them because all our hopes have been placed in them. And the wrestle between the cult of idolatry that rises in this film and then the resistance to that idolatry from even those who are close, and the shock at almost these messianic narratives playing out where, you know, there's a almost like a death and a death and a rebirth,
Mm-hmm.
and the changes, and it just It's sprawling and incredible. It's the best film I've seen this year, and it's definitely one I've watched it probably 7 or 8 times this year, and every time it gets better. It keeps
Mm,
giving. There's
mm.
nothing. There's nothing. I don't. That part didn't work. No, it's all great. And I see things at I couldn't see. It's as good as you can make a sequel, a blockbuster sequel. And it reminded me of those moments back in the 90s where we had those real big blockbusters, non-comic book blockbusters. What that would be like these perfect film. You like, oh, I'm gonna watch that 50 times before I die. Like that's Dune 2. And yeah, that's my list because there's no way I'm moving that one out.
I couldn't agree more. Denis Villeneuve, he different, bro. He is different. When you look at his catalog, Sicario. So we
Prisoners,
were talking,
Sicario,
yeah, we were talking in part
Arrival.
one. Oh my gosh. Arrival,
Arrival is
Blade Runner
ridiculous.
2049, Doom 1 and
2049.
2. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know what that was. Um, Hang on. Sorry, my
Denis
alarm is
giving you a
on.
call right now.
I wish, bro. I'd be like, yes, whatever,
Denis like
whatever
color.
you
Denis
want.
like I need the color compromise. I need color compromise out here. You
Oh, that's
crazy,
amazing.
man. That man
Um,
playing with a different deck, man. Let's keep it a bean, man. He playing with a
Now
different deck,
Denis
bro.
is another level, bro, and he is in his bag. You know what surprised me is that Dune 2, there wasn't automatically uh just a rubber stamp on Dune 3. They wanted to see
Yeah,
how Dune 2 did, which boggles my
exactly.
mind because I'm like, y'all, first of all, you're not about to leave us hanging. Like you got to finish the story. That I would punch somebody. And then second of all, like you really didn't think this was going to do okay in the theater? It's one of the top 10 grossing movies of the entire year. You're good.
So I know they got Doom Messiah coming out. I'll be honest with you, man. I would be cool if they stopped it here. I'm cool.
Because it was
You
just so
you
peak.
can't you can't do a better Dune movie. And if you can't do a better one, why would you try to die? I'll
Look,
imagine how the story closes
is
out.
Denis that dude or not?
No, yeah, okay.
Is
Fair,
he that dude or not? I mean,
fair,
so
fair.
and then
Point taken.
Chalamet was just starting. And you know what? The Zendaya as a counterpoint in the story.
Oh, phenomenal.
Wow.
Phenomenal.
She does it. She does the
She
thing.
did it. Yeah.
Whew, what
Well,
a
let's
list.
so I'll
Yeah,
go through
let's
mine.
recap.
I'll go through my 10. I'll recap. I have Jason Nelson's You Belong live album. Shabuzi Where I Am Isn't Where I'm Going. The comic book, The Power Fantasy, the first 4 issues. Supercell, the Netflix streaming show. The book Homie Don't Play That on the origin story of In Living Color by David Peisner. The Netflix show Sprint, the movie Conclave, the animated TV series X-Men 97, the book The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and the movie Denis Villeneuve, Dune Part 2.
Dang, so you did all 10?
I did all
Or was that
10.
just the five? Okay. All
That was
right. Here
all
we go.
10.
All right. All right. All right. So I'll start with part twos. Mine were the morning pages by Julia Cameron, journaling, the masterclass app. I cheated and did the history books category. I talked about the X Exodus and Thin versus Thin political theology or politics in black and white Christian edition in this part two. In part one, I talked about Beyonce's album Cowboy Carter, Blood Orange, the music group, Business Movers podcast, The Lioness, and Transformers One.
Do you have any honorable mentions?
Oh, I got honorable mentions, and I'll just do quick.
Okay.
Do you want me to just list them all, or
Oh, you
want
can,
to
yeah,
go
you can do
back and
whatever you
forth?
want. You can do whatever you want. No, do your thing.
Okay,
These are all
so
Jamar's honorable mentions.
Honorable mentions, black women. In my opinion, they should have won Time Person of the Year. They did the dang thing, especially in politics, right? When the black women, Win with Black Women had their Zoom call right after Kamala Harris uh, got
Yeah,
the
that was
announcement.
incredible.
That I don't think she would have had the kind of running start sprint out of the gate without that, which came what a day after
Yep.
the announcement
I think
and
it was
broke
same
all
day,
kind
bro.
of
Wasn't it
records.
same day? I think it
It
was
was a
same day.
Sunday. That's all
Yeah,
I
no,
know.
that's
And
same
so
day. Same day.
was that evening, and they were true to this. This wasn't something that they did at the
Wow.
last minute because of the announcement, right? So that's just one example. We talked about, the Cowboy Carter album. You talked about the Olympics and the
Yeah,
amazing
absolutely.
Coco Gauff and all of these people,
Yep.
the WNBA, all of this stuff. That's all Black women, and especially even after the election and what Black women are saying, since they were the group, a demographic that voted most in support of democracy. So that was one. Here's another one. Alex Cross, the TV
Yeah.
series.
That's on my honorable mentions.
Interesting, bro.
That's on my honorable
Interesting,
mentions.
bro.
Very,
I
very, very
like
good.
it centers Black people is in a
Yeah.
really kind of approachable way. It's not for everyone. It's very dark
Very
mystery,
dark. Yeah.
very brutal, but interesting story. Personally, sort of selfishly, January 2024 was the 5-year anniversary of The Color of Compromise,
Yeah,
a
that's a big one.
book. I still hear people talking about how it shifted their perspective. They'll say the phrase changed their lives. I have a hard time saying that, but
1000%.
that's what they say, and it changed
1000%.
my life for sure. So that was 5-year anniversary. We did a whole event. Tyler came to Louisville, tore it up. We had a good time. You could actually catch the replay on Pass the Mic. I believe we have that, either that
Absolutely.
or footnotes, one of those. Substack, which I've mentioned before, but this year, community is really becoming a community, which I think is going to be critical going into this next regime, is finding people even across the interwebs who are of like mind. And so it's become a gathering place, and it's actually one of those landing places that's happening in the exodus from X. So that Notre Dame, what can I say? We had an incredible football season,
Man,
led
shout out
by
to
only
Marcus
the
Freeman, man.
second. Yes, led by only the second Black head coach in Notre Dame's history. I was there when Tyrone Willingham was there,
Yep. I
and
remember that
they
too.
did that man dirty. But
They did.
I had my reservations. I had my reservations about Marcus Freeman, but this man,
Be the truth.
woo, he the truth. And we just won the playoff game against IU.
Leader of men. A
Uh,
leader of men, for
a
sure.
leader of men, is an incredible, upstanding guy. All of that stuff. The music group Common Hymnal. This is
Yeah, Common
protest and
Hymnal had a
praise.
great year. Great year.
My goodness. And they're about
Shout
to
out to
have
Common
another
Hymnal.
great year. Shout out to Common Hymnal, all the folks involved in it. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And so, yeah, that's my honorable mention list.
All right, so there were two things. That's a great list. There were two things that were here till today, and I took them out, and not because they're not amazing, but Shogun, the TV series, is absolutely incredible.
Mm, mm.
Um, Broke records for how many awards it won, Emmys it won. I mean, just a picture perfect television series, and very unexpected ending. And then the second one that was in there was Kendrick Lamar.
Oh,
So
yeah.
obviously,
Culture bending.
culture bending, and not any particular one of his tracks or diss tracks to Drake or his GNX album, which just recently came out. But just him, he had a tremendous year being himself, and he had a tremendous year showing what intentionality and waiting in the wings could get you, in terms of preparation and preparing. Not just even yes, I think there's a plotting on Drake's downfall, but this is really more so a plotting on his come up rather than Drake's come down. So shout out to Kendrick Lamar, of course. The other animated movie that I was thinking was gonna maybe make a mention, a reference, an appearance is Wild Robot. Wild Robot was
Mm,
really, really, really good.
okay.
So if you haven't checked out Wild Robot, check that out. I'm serious. It's maybe better than Transformers One. I dare say. Dare I say?
Wow.
Dare I say?
I've heard
The
nothing but
book
good
that
things. Haven't seen it yet,
oh,
but
it's
yes.
amazing, bro. Amazing. The book, The Challenge of Joseph H. Jackson, by Jared
Uh-huh.
Alcantara. I'm
He
currently
was
reading
in
that,
my
so I couldn't put it on my list.
There's a whole
Oh,
chapter
you
in my
said,
dissertation.
yeah,
Joseph
yeah,
H. Jackson.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Joseph H. Jackson. So that book I'm currently reading, which is really good. Ryan O'Fay's album is outstanding. It probably got more plays than the other albums on my list. I just like the other albums maybe a little bit better, but Ryan O'Fay is amazing. and easy breezy music. You can let it ride out. And typically he's known for his worship music, but this is kind of more of a vibes, lo-fi type album. The show Presumed, well, I should say the shows Presumed Innocent on Apple TV, Penguin on Disney Plus, The Madness, Coleman Domingo on Netflix, and True Detective Night Country on Max. True Detective Night Country was phenomenal. Also, Mr. and Mrs. Smith and Cross also were on that list as well. And then two more albums. Lucky Days album, I think it's called Algorithm, was tremendous. And then Yolanda Adams' new album was amazing as well. So shout out to this is just some gems, some throwaways, some loosies, so to speak, that I'll throw out there to y'all. Man, Cultural Artifacts 2024.
This was
made
epic.
A movie.
This was one of the ones, boy.
This one of them ones. What do y'all think? We love to hear y'all. Tweet at us, or we probably not gonna respond on Twitter, but IG us,
thread us,
and reach out to us, thread us, do something. We would love to hear your responses and what has been a cultural artifact for you. Jemar, this has been fun, man. We love this. Happy 2024, heading into 2025, geared up. We all taking a deep breath, and we all, we are lacing up our armor extra tight. We're going, we gotta double tie the shoelaces, man. This next year is gonna be something else. But I'm glad we're rocking together.
Rebel Ridge.
And,
that's Rebel the one Ridge. I was trying to think of. Rebel Ridge was Rebel so Ridge, interesting. Man. Netflix movie. Yeah.
Netflix movie. Yeah. That was very, very interesting. Yeah. Very,
obviously, y'all, no shots taken. Obviously, we could have a part 3, 4, and 5 for cultural artifacts. So if your fave didn't make it, it's no hate, it's no shade. We had a difficult job selecting, but what an epic one. What a great end to this year of podcasting. Look for more. Don't forget to subscribe, rate us, review us, all that good stuff. But yeah, thanks, man. I learned a lot.
Bro, I appreciate you, man. We'll see y'all again soon in 2025 on the next Pass the Mic.